Welcome to Kratom Sobriety. This is episode 23. My name is Charlie. This episode is dedicated to the topic of the feel-free Kratom Kava product. Jacob has an interview this week with John, who became addicted to those and was able to find a way to kick the free feel drinks. Just a quick note, we've had some audio issues both last week and this week. Please be patient with us. We're doing our best with our DIY production budget. So before we get talking, I have a voicemail from a listener.
Hey, this is Jordan. Just been listening to your podcast. Just found out about it yesterday, but long story short, got kind of hooked on the feel-free things and just made up my mind yesterday that I'm going to quit and hopefully go this last week with the stuff I have left and start cold turkey this weekend. But anyways, I got on your podcast from listening to the one you had with Savannah.
I have an update too. Jordan was able to stay off the feel-free. He's up to 2.5 weeks now. So the feel-free drinks, they come in little blue bottles. They were notoriously sold at 7-Elevens across America, but I'm told that they're mostly pulled off for those shelves now, depending on your geography. And they are also heavily promoted on the internet and social media and through social media influencers via podcasts. They had like an ambassador program with a payout of a 40% commission, it looked like, from the earlier Wayback Machine promotions on their website. Feel Free product is a combination of kava extract and kratom. And the main issue with it was many customers bought the product and were not aware of the kratom contents and or the amount of kratom that was in the product, as it was largely promoted as a kava drink with ancient plants. I was able to find on the internet evidence of 4 different labels over the years. So many people report that Feel Free is more addicting to them compared to taking similar amounts of kratom or kava either alone or together. There's been a lot of internet conjecturing of why this is the case. The main speculation is, one, that there's a hidden ingredient in these products, which there's no proof to this, and it's totally alleged. Suggested either canna or phenibut or betel nut have all been suggested. Again, there's no been testing of this, providing proof of this allegation. Part of the speculation comes from people report taking a drug test and getting various positive indicators on these tests for all sorts of drugs. Theory number 2 of why this may be more addicting is the use of potentiators, different juices, citric acid, etc. Somehow the formula makes the individual psychoactive ingredients more potent. Number 3 is an excipient, which is another type of ingredient that increases the bioavailability of these substances. For extracting, the labels say that there is plain leaf. Many wonder if the kava extract, what's making it have that much more of a bite. The last theory was mixing, that just somehow the combination of kava and kratom, which is not traditionally put together like that, makes it somehow more powerful. But in recent weeks, there was an emerging theory that perhaps the kratom is going through a process that's similar to fermentation. Many vendors call this chocolate kratom. At one time, I made a joke about it being kratom booze, but it's more fermenting of like a sauerkraut. Just this week, in episode 22, we had a special analysis from a guest talking about this compound, and I'm going to do a little clip from that episode right here.
Mitragynine pseudoindoxyl is an extremely potent metabolite, and that it originates from 7-hydroxymitragynine, Studies in mice have shown that mitragynine pseudoindoxil is somewhere between 20 and 35 times the potency of morphine. And given these findings, I think it's clear that this compound has significantly greater ability to activate these specific receptors involved in opioid consumption. While this compound is naturally produced during the metabolism of mitragynine in human plasma, its levels can actually be artificially elevated under certain conditions. One way of artificially causing this is by increasing the levels of mitragynine pseudoindoxil simply by way of fermentation. It's known that fermentation of kratom increases the levels of this chemical, and believe it or not, this has been known since the 1970s. And users report more of a painkiller-like effect, likely indicating more activation of those opioid receptors in these users. It's worrying that manufacturers may capitalize on this, either knowingly or unknowingly. They're essentially creating a far more addictive product when they look to increase these levels of this chemical.
So if you found yourself particularly hooked to the free fill products, the tonics, these would be both the original ones with the silver caps and maybe to a lesser extent the newer ones with the black cap. It might be this process fermenting the kratom to make it more potent. So now for the interview. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Jacob from Maine, and this week on the podcast, we've got John. John had found himself taking the Feel Free Kratom product, and he felt a little bit deceived. Well, not a little bit. He felt a lot deceived by the product. Well, I'll let him talk a lot about that. So this week's discussion is mostly going to focus on Feel Free products, but I'm sure no matter what you were taking, if you were like me, maybe it was OPMS, or maybe if it was just regular powder, I'm sure you'll relate to the discussion, and we're going to get all into that. John, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going today, Jacob? I would say I'm an average guy. I'm in sales. I've got a 9-to-5 job, a girlfriend, a house in the suburbs, a minivan. I'm into music and Legos. I value humor, and I use it to get through difficult times, and I value my relationship. So pretty run-of-the-mill, boring stuff there.
So what is your kratom abstinence date?
So my kratom abstinence date, it was last month on the 13th. So and just as we discussed a little while ago, I had never done kratom until I did Feel Free, and I started it when I didn't know kratom was in it. So that's really the only kratom I've done up until I tried to stop the first time, and then I was like, well, I wonder if the regular stuff is any better than this, or at least easier to come off of.
So you did have a little experience with just regular kratom, but it wasn't until you got into that. And So congratulations on over a month and change off of the Feel Free products. That has to feel pretty amazing.
Appreciate it. It is good. It's just one day at a time, trying to readapt my brain to the new normal.
Yeah, we've all been there on this podcast, unfortunately. So let's get into it then. So how did you first come to, know about the Feel Free product and ultimately consume the Feel Free product?
So as I said, I'm in sales, so I call on, retail accounts. One of my accounts started selling it, and someone who worked there told me about it and was like, the way it was introduced to me was, hey, this stuff is great. It tastes like shit, but it makes you feel like you've taken a pretty mild ADHD medication. And I was like, that's good. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but not medicated for several years, because the older I got, the more I felt like it was like a bad idea to, start going down that road with stimulants, especially since I have blood pressure issues. I'm trying to stay away from that sort of thing. So I was like, well, great. That sounds good. So the first time I ever had it, I had a half of a vial, and I'm not really sure how much I got out of it, because anyone who's taken it knows that stuff has sediment in it. And if you don't shake it really well, you might just end up getting a bunch of disgusting pineapple juice off the top. So that was the first time I had it. It was that, and that's how it was presented to me the first time.
Oh, wow. So just here's this innocuous substance. Tell me about your history. Do you have any history of other substances, or was this kind of your first experience with an addictive product substance?
My whole life I've struggled with that. Thankfully, like we spoke about before we started here, I've never really had any issues with hard drugs. Alcohol has been a kind of an up and down. It's been a constant struggle my whole life. It's never been so bad where it really, screwed anything up too badly. But I've had months of 3-month periods of sobriety, starting again, not doing too much. It gets to a peak, I stop. I go back. The first time I actually had Feel Free, I had actually been sober for the longest time in my life since I started drinking, which is about 3 months. So I was free and clear the first time I had Feel Free. So I didn't have nothing interfering with it. I knew exactly what I was feeling from just that product. So thankfully, just as far as an informative standpoint, I was able to get the full picture because that was the only thing I had in me at the time. Just we're always in that searching mode. What's a fast way to feel something good? And when something gets marketed to you that's supposedly healthy, you jump at it feeling like you did a good thing, and it turns out that it wasn't. You feel like you've been betrayed.
Yeah, definitely. When and how did the Feel Free products start to become a problem for you? And how did your kind of usage progress, I guess?
Like I said before, the first time I had a half a shot. And from what I've read on Reddit, it seems like a lot of people have the same experience as they grow to abuse it. It seems like it starts as kind of a snowball effect. Everybody starts having 1 or 2 a day. And then about 2 months in, people are at 8 or 10. And I had a very, very similar experience. I would have one maybe every 2 or 3 days. And I was only having them in the morning. And then a couple weeks in, I would get one in the morning and on the way home from work. A couple weeks more, I was getting one in the morning on the way home from work and then going back out to get another one. And then by the time I was 2 weeks in, I was having one in the morning, trying to find places near where I was operating during the day that sold it to get some more. And then by the 3-month point, I was having 2 or 3 at a time, and each time I had it, and that would be anywhere from 4 to 5 times a day. And I didn't realize that this was an issue really until my girlfriend came into my life. When you're living by yourself, it's really easy to get into those places where you can kind of justify and normalize what you're abusing, because since nobody sees it, nobody reacts to that, and you're just like, this isn't an issue because when I walk out the door in the morning, no one knows this is going on. But when my girlfriend came into my life, I realized that I would just do absolutely anything to keep taking these things, including, making excuses where I was going, why I was talking so fast all the time, why my skin was dry and flaking off. And it really, I was really blessed to have that outside perspective, because that's really what it took to make me realize that this was becoming a serious problem for me and my wallet.
The progression that you described was very similar to what I had. I was married the whole time, but I would make up excuses to tell my wife why I had to run out at 6 p.m. because I forgot to buy a shot earlier, or that day I decided I was gonna, be able to make it through the rest of the day without one, and then I started feeling like crap by the time dinner time rolled around.
Yeah, it starts to feel like you're like you stepped off a ledge onto a tightrope, and you just need that solid ground again. It gets scary once you start getting away from it.
Yeah, it definitely does. You said a strain on your wallet. If you don't mind me asking, how much do you think you were kind of spending at your peak on it a day?
Probably about $100. Doing the math is the other things, and that really helped me to put it all in perspective. I mean, a year and a half of use, progressively getting worse, peaking at probably $100 a day, definitely was eye-opening when I sat down and opened up the control tower on my banking website and saw because primary place I got them was gas stations, right? And I know how much I'm spending on gas. So if I subtract that, everything left over was pretty much that stuff. Looking at that, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, same. I had a similar experience. I was like, I don't even want to talk about the amount of money I spent on those damn little shots and how much I could have probably put in the bank or spent on something worthwhile. So what happened to make you decide that, you had to quit?
Well, first and foremost, I know that I was putting my girlfriend through hell. And it wasn't like I was being an asshole. I wasn't being mean to her, physical, nothing like that. It was just that, when someone really cares about you and they see you're struggling with someone, it's just as bad continuing to put them through that every single day. And the stuff it just feel free just made me very, very empathetic. I would always feel like, a general sense of well-being that made me ignore a lot of things in life. And I would get to these every weekend was basically a 2-day withdrawal, because I would get to the weekend and for a while, and before that actually happened, for a while I would be taking them on the weekend, and she knew. We'd go back and forth to like, I'm not taking them right now, and hiding it, to, well, if you're going to do it, just tell me you're doing it. And we would do that for a while, and go back and forth. And then one of the times where it was in the negative zone, where she didn't know I was doing it, and I was trying to hide it, it would be like every weekend was like a 2-day withdrawal. And that's when I started to get like, oh my, okay, I'm lying to my girlfriend, I'm lying to myself, I'm withdrawing every single weekend. I know I don't like that, and I continue going down that road, and I tried to stop actively, not just like because, oh, it's the weekend, my girlfriend's here, I need to not look like I'm doing this. I tried to actively stop, where I was like, I'm going to do this like 7 or 8 times. And every single time there would just be, I'd get away from the withdrawal symptoms, stop. And it's so crazy the way you rationalize it. It's like, I was like, wow, I went so long without it. You know what I deserve right now is a feel free.
Yeah, I did the same exact thing over a 2-year period. I probably would get, a week, 2 weeks. I think the most I went was like 22 days once. And I basically would do the same thing. I'd be like, well, this time, I'm sick of feeling like crap. I'm sick of feeling all these emotions. And, it wasn't that bad. I was able to get through all those terrible, horrible withdrawals that were, for me, worse than, opiates when I did those. But somehow I could talk myself into just doing it one more time. And I think where that ends.
Yeah, the addictive mind is an incredibly creative one.
Yeah.
When it comes to justifying and rationalizing the reason to continue to use something that is fundamentally doing nothing but ruining your life.
Yeah, I think the hard part with a substance like Kratom, and in particularly with the Feel Free product, it's marketed to us as this substance that, not going to cause addiction, and it's like it's a moral failing of you. I think there's a subconscious element to that where you're like, well, it's legal, it's probably not as bad as alcohol or hard drugs, so is it really that bad? I can justify myself into taking it again.
Well, yeah, they sell it at a gas station. What's they sell Coca-Cola at the gas station. What you can it's right there, it's available. You don't have to go to a head shop to buy it. A lot of places in the state that I live in anyway, it's in any convenience store to sell it.
Yeah, I'm lucky in the fact that where I live in Maine, it's not like that. You have to kind of go to a head shop. I don't know if I think I've seen it in a gas station or two, but I don't think there's a law or anything. It just seems like it hasn't gotten that way here yet, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I know you said you'd never had it before. You probably heard this from a couple people. The general consensus is, and I definitely count myself among the people that have this opinion. They're doing something in that formula that makes it hit harder and faster, and it just blows out your receptors. It's gone in 30 minutes, and it leaves you wanting another one really, really bad.
I was actually, before this conversation, I was trying to get a little bit educated over the past couple of days, and I was reading through some of the Reddit subreddit, and I did see that and various opinions. I've seen similar things said about some of the OPMS products, but that seemed to be a while ago. And my experience was after after the first year or two, the duration it started, it would be like an hour to like 3 hours, and then it slowly got slower and slower to the point where it's like you said, like 30 minutes, and that was it.
It's gone so fast. And I've read on Reddit, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but I've heard people say that like they think they ferment the kratom, which makes the method of action like
interesting,
faster and more intense. I mean, it definitely gives you like a burst, almost like a stimulant of some kind.
What was the first month of your quit like? How did that go?
Well, the first month of my quit, my 8th quit was, and God willing, my final one. The first 4 days, just just like everybody has experienced with it's the second day is the worst. I stopped this time because I had to throw myself in front of the bus because I was like, I can't keep doing this. So I got my family involved. I took my girlfriend to my parents' house and I sat them down. And I was like, I've got an issue with this stuff. It is bleeding me dry financially, emotionally, and spiritually. And I need some help here. Because I knew there was no other way. And unless I injected that accountability into my life, I know myself and I would just figure out new ways to justify it every day. And I had to get that back door closed. It was one of the hardest days of my life because it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Stigmatizing. And, but it ended up being the best decision that I've ever made because having that support system get me through that's the only thing that worked. I could have tried it a million times, not been able to without bringing other people into the equation. I went home that weekend knowing I was never going to touch that stuff. There were days where I was like, well, fuck it. I'll just have one and lie about it. But I never went back there. That first weekend was brutal. And I've had that first weekend dozens of times, the cold sweats, just a general feeling of something horrible about to happen, something dreadful is like about to happen around every corner, shaking, feeling cold and hot at the same time, not being able to regulate my body temperature, feeling like if I got out of bed, I would just die. But after 4 days, that's the thing. It's like, that's what's so frustrating that it took me so long to do it, because at any given time, I was only 4 days away from feeling normal again. And that's the part that really is frustrating. So once I got past that, first week, physical symptoms gone. Second week, that's when the really, really bad emotional stuff started setting in, because, my brain had been used to feeling like nothing was ever wrong and everything I was doing was perfect, and I was talkative and energetic all the time, to going back to the net neutral, which of course you shoot past that when you stop doing anything that makes you feel that way, to a net negative for a while. And you're just like, my God, not doing something sucks. Normal is just awful. What the hell is this? I was stressed, anxiety all the time, paranoia about, like, if you were to ask my girlfriend what if I had any irrational fears, she would probably be able to list like 100 of them for that second week. Like, I was worried about everything. The worst part about coming out of it, though, is the constant feeling that it's like I stepped out of a fog and I was seeing all these things that I missed. I was worried about my job, about stuff that I'd missed, just feeling like I had been so lucky that I hadn't screwed anything up so bad that it really screwed me over and I lost my job or something. Just that feeling that I just let my life go to hell while I was on vacation from it. I was there physically, but mentally I was just so distant from it, kind of just like on autopilot, a very, very euphoric autopilot the whole time. And mind you, like, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. Like, in order to get that good feeling, I was taking so many of them sometimes where I literally would just throw up. Like, that's how my day would be. Like, I would just throw up.
I've been there before. Totally. It's kind of crazy that you put yourself through that. There's so many things that you said there that I think are some gold nuggets that I want to point out for our listeners. So the first one was telling someone and coming clean to your family. In recovery, that's often called burning the ships. The metaphor comes from when one of, I think it was Cortez, who was a terrible Spanish conquistador. So don't dwell on that. Dwell on the analogy, which is basically when he got to Mexico for the first time, he burnt the ship. So there was no going back to Spain, and they had to kind of like conquer. So the analogy for recovery is, if you tell someone or come clean to your family, you've burnt the ships, there's no going back, right?
Right.
And it creates this kind of accountability mechanism that you cannot undo. The genie's out of the bottle, and like now you've got people that are invested in your recovery, and it helps with you. I'm doing this for myself, number one, but number two, I've let people know that this is a goal and something that I want to make commitment to, which can be super powerful. So, if you're struggling with any substance, and Kratom is just like any other addictive drug, make sure that, when you're comfortable, it really helps to tell someone. So I wanted to highlight that for the listeners. The second piece is I kind of felt the same way as you did. For me, the physical part, it usually lasted a little longer. Maybe that speaks to the specific feel-free The second week was always worse for me because the mental anguish, like it literally gave me suicidal thoughts the last couple times. And I definitely can resonate with the taking so much. Like I can never get enough to like get that feeling back at the end. And I would try so hard that I would take so much that I would make myself physically ill.
I didn't really, I've always been like tangentially aware of opioid problem in the country, but never have I done so much research on it until I started taking this stuff and I started to get myself away from it, because a lot of people maintain that it's like an extremely innocuous version of an opioid in a lot of ways. Withdrawal symptoms. Have learned so much about opioids in my journey just to get away from this stuff, and that sort of awareness helps. Regardless of what, it doesn't really matter what drug you could be addicted to jelly donuts. It's all the same cons. Obviously, there's no physical withdrawal from jelly donuts, but the concept is pretty much the same everywhere. You don't like the way your mind is, the way it is. You want to change it, and you want to change it quickly. I mean, I definitely have learned a lot since I tried to stop this stuff.
For you, did you have anything that you took to help with the withdrawals, or anything that you would recommend that seemed to help most with the withdrawals when you went through that?
I would say it's about 10% that sort of stuff and 90% gritting your teeth and holding on, which sucks ass,
Yeah.
Honestly, the thing that helped the most was just drinking a ton of water. Diuretics really help on it because they bind to the kratom and help flush it out of your body. Magnesium is good, and vitamin B, vitamin C, and D. All that stuff is great, and it helps you get to a better place. At the end of the day, you're fighting a feeling that you want to have more so than anything else. But like I said, magnesium was really helpful for me, and just tons and tons of water. Just basically, I was basically treating myself like I was just sick, like I had the flu or something like that. And I really don't know if it did anything, because like I said, I was through it in 5 days, but those days fucking sucked. I didn't know how I got through it without just being like, all right, well, you know what? I know a really quick way to make this all go away and have it feel free. That's the thing, it's those things do help the physical symptoms, but when the physical symptoms are gone, you're left in that desolate field of a feel-free bottle-shaped hole in your life, and trying to figure out where you are and what you're going to do with that is the hardest part, and that takes time. It takes time, and in my case, it took therapy. I started seeing a therapist because I just really didn't think I could get through that by myself.
You're absolutely right. The kind of embracing the suck and just being able to say, like this is temporary. It's going to suck, and it really does suck, and you're not going to sleep, and it's going to be terrible. But you just have to, like you said, grin and bear it and get through it.
Reddit group is probably the best supplement that's out there. That is the support from other people experiencing the same things is more beneficial than anything you could put in your body to get you through that tumultuous time in your life. Like, I really found a lot, and I actually didn't find that group until after I was past the worst part of it, but I was like reading, and I was like, I got a lot of gratification from posting in there trying to help people, and I really found it to be super enriching in the grand scheme of my life.
That's great. Yeah, it's, any sort of sense of community, Reddit groups. There's a lot of. I'm in a couple Facebook groups that are about Kratom. I don't particularly like Facebook all that much, and that's really the only reason why I'm on there at this point. And yeah, there's several subreddits out there. There's a feel free one. There's a quitting Kratom one. Opiate-based abstinence programs if you've got crossover addictions like some of us do. But they're all really good. Besides the therapy and the Reddit group, anything else you're doing for support? Any type of specific recovery groups or anything like that?
Not any groups. My family and my girlfriend are checking in constantly, and the double-edged sword of like you said, burning the shit. You have that support, but it's also like a constant reminder to problem you have. Some days I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm doing fine today. All right, I get it. But then you realize it's all coming from a place of love, and I wouldn't be where I was without it. That the support of my friends and family, all of my loved ones, is just. It's so important, and I realize that some people out there don't have the same support system. That's why, like you said, the community aspect of it is so important. Not everyone has a strong support system, but you can always build one with people online. It's always available. And that's the thing that helps the most. Other people struggling with the same thing, you know, because everyone if you lock yourself into an echo chamber, you're never going to get out of it. You're going to be there forever. You're going to fall back into the same thing. And I think that's the most important thing.
Can't do this alone. There are so many different ways that you can go about recovery now, which is kind of a great thing. You know, there's not just like a 12-step might not be for you. Maybe Reddit isn't for you. Maybe therapy isn't for you, but there's probably something out there that is for you. And it's just a matter of finding what it is. Let's talk a little bit about the Feel Free product, because I know you got a lot to say about that, and I want to make sure I create enough space for that. Was there something especially hard about Feel Free in particular that was a barrier to quitting it or anything like that?
Oh, the hardest thing is the availability. I mean, just like with Kratom, it's available in the state that I live in. It's available at gas stations, pretty much, and head shops, liquor stores. You can find it pretty much everywhere. It's pretty aggressively marketed as well. So that's the hardest thing, just how easy it is to get. If someone doesn't want you to be taking it and they know you're going to one place for it, you can go to another place to be like, I didn't go over there to get it. Like I was saying earlier, you get creative when you have that sensation-seeking tendency. That's hard. I know the way. So you've never had it before, but I'll describe what it feels like. So
Okay.
It is like somebody set your brain on fire, but it feels good. Low dose, you get mild photosensitivity and extreme euphoria. You get really talkative, just like on something like Adderall or Vyvanse or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You add another one on top of that, it kind of gives you this sort of nausea, but that it sticks in the back of your throat. Like it's not in your stomach, it's just like in your neck, and it feels like you could throw up if you tried to, but you're not going to. The euphoria intensifies, but it doesn't really matter how much you put in there. It all goes away at pretty much the same rate. And that's why this stuff is so volatile, because people get that feeling. Trying to chase it is extremely expensive, and it's really bad for you. I was already going to a medication management psychologist, right? And while taking them, and this was the first time I went to see a psychiatrist, whichever one can actually do medication management. I always forget.
Psychiatrist.
Okay. Yeah. So the one that can give you chemicals. And I remember this was at a point where I was taking probably about 8 to 10 a day. I went there and got my blood pressure taken, and they were like, do you take any stimulants, or have you had like 20 energy drinks today? Because my blood pressure was like through the roof. That was one of the first indicators where I was like, all right, this isn't just a problem for me financially and mentally. This is affecting my actual physical health now.
Yeah.
My blood pressure was like 156 over 101. And
Oh, wow.
they were like, all right, well, this is like urgent care levels. And I just was like, no, it's fine. I just had like 5 bangs while I was at. Realized until then that it was really doing that to me. And after I noticed that, I was like, wow, I'm starting to feel like my skin is full all the time. Like you can feel your blood going through there. And I mean, it's just so weird that something that was so bad that made you feel so good for such a short amount of time could take that big of a hold on you.
Right. Well, I went to the dentist, and this is actually just triggering this memory of this conversation. But the hygienist was like, "Is your mouth always this dry?" And I'm like, "I don't think it is." But I was like, "Oh yeah, it's fine." But I knew what it was from, right? It was because I took a bunch of Kratom shots before I went in, because I knew I was going to be sitting in a chair for, how long getting dental work. And I was like, I got to be high to do it, crazy shit.
I didn't try Kratom until after until I started to try to actively stop taking Feel Free, to try to taper. And I remember one of the questions you had mentioned tapering, or maybe you hadn't mentioned that one yet, but I will say that for people that are really having a problem with this, as shitty as this may sound, tapering is not the way to go, because it's always going to leave that back door open, and you're just going to give yourself that excuse. I know with some things that have a more intense physical withdrawal sensation, that might be useful, certainly for your physical health, but I found that it was impossible for me to do that.
You did try to taper at first by switching over, but that obviously didn't work, it sounds like.
tried to taper by switching over to things that said they have just Kratom in them. Now, I don't know, you've probably read this about Feel Free, but its whole thing is that it's kava and Kratom, right? Now,
Yes, I knew that, and I've heard, and I think you mentioned this before we were talking, that it was originally marketed that it was just kava and the Kratom was in there, and no one was told about it.
it was their exact literature on their package was with kava and other ancient plants. Doesn't that sound
Ancient plants, huh?
Nothing-
Yeah, it sounds great.
nothing wrong with that? Just ancient plants here. Nothing to see here.
Can't be bad at all.
Yeah,
Those
so-
ancient plants.
I know that kava is pretty innocuous. I mean, people take that for stress. Taken to excess, it emulates the feeling of being kind of drunk. But other than that, it's not that big of a deal. It's an herbal supplement. You can buy it in capsules at Walgreens and stuff, I think. Probably. Don't quote me on that. But I know that you can get it, and it's not that big of a detriment. But one of the something they're doing in there is just a whole different emergent factor. But I switched over to trying to take just Kratom shots. There's other brands out there and stuff, and I found it to not be as euphoric. And that is when I initially started to suspect, like, okay, what's the difference here? Because they're saying the only difference is that Feel Free has kava in it. So are they saying that when you mix kava and Kratom together, it creates an emergent factor that like blows out your receptors or something? That didn't seem like the case. So that was the first aha moment there. Then I tried that. I tried capsules. I tried other shots. I never did try powder. So I've never actually tried Kratom powder, but I always kept going back. And because it had a more intense euphoria, even though it was gone faster than some of the actual Kratom shots that I took, that's how intense it was. Like, I just wanted it all the time because of how it made me feel for such a short period of time. It made me feel focused, alert, energized. I mean, what's not to like about that? Other than the fact it only lasts 30 minutes and they cost $10 a pop, and you got to keep buying them to feel that way. So that's why I say the thing about tapering, because I tried all those other Kratom products and they didn't do anything for me. And I don't know if that's because I started with that stuff or if it was just the quality of the Kratom I was getting. I know it can vary in quality, but it's really weird.
Yeah. I didn't have much success with tapering either. When I first got onto Kratom and got dependent on it, I was early in my usage and I switched over to capsules and I was able to taper off, but I relapsed pretty quickly after that. And then from there, I would sometimes buy powder when I was kind of low on money, and I would use it, but it never really did anything other than kept me out of withdrawals. That was about all it did, and didn't do anything else. It was just like the insanity of just buying that to not go through withdrawal until I got more money. It was so crazy things you do.
I was in that cycle too, towards the end. Now another thing I hadn't really mentioned is that I do know that somewhere along the line they were forced to sell two separate packages with different colored lids. Gradually, stores started to just not sell the ones with like all of the Kratom in it, and that's when. And the reason I think about this, because you mentioned the thing about taking it just to not get the withdrawal symptoms. By the point where it had gotten as bad as it was going to get for me, I was taking the ones that didn't have as much Kratom in it, just to avoid the symptoms, because. And then all I was left with was, this shit sucks. It tastes awful. And I'm literally just using it to not feel like absolute shit. It didn't have the euphoria anymore. And that's when I was like, wow, okay, I'm taking a drug to not be sick. I'm literally addicted to this now. That was kind of like the come to Jesus moment for me.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I was like shoveling teaspoons and tablespoons of powder into my mouth and like washing it down. It was just gross and it didn't do anything.
But it's just and this
sludge. Yeah,
this is just kind of anecdotal, but like I remember, sometimes I'd be trying to drink them so fast just to get it in me that I'd like spill it. The shit would stain the fuck out of my clothes. Like it's just like I just remember all the like little drops I had everywhere that when I stopped, I'd see them and be like, oh god damn it.
Yeah, I threw out a pair of pants because I spilled some on there and I couldn't get it out. And
it's just like
think back to that. Yeah, it's gross. All right, well, what is your life like today? Now that you're free of the Feel Free shot.
It's good. Like I said, it's a struggle every day just to feel, because I think I read someone had said this on Reddit the other day. I wish I could remember the name so I could give them credit. The feeling of being sober sucks. Fighting every day, filling that hole with good things and good people, as my therapist said, has really been super rewarding. In the morning, feeling good. In the afternoon, I feel like shit, kind of depressed, and that's when man, there is something out there in the world that makes me feel perfect really fast. And then I get over that hump, and I'm back to myself towards the late afternoon, but working towards the day where I can just get through an entire day being fine with just being fine. And that's the hardest thing. Identifying normal has been the biggest uphill battle of my entire life. And it always has been. I've always tried to fill that hole, but I still drink a little bit, like me and my girlfriend went to speakeasy in town the other day. So I still drink a little bit, but it doesn't have the insane hold over my life that it used to. And nothing really does, maybe except for energy drinks.
That's good. Yeah, I know that for me, I could never touch a drink again, and it'll be problematic. But I will tell you this: as you progress, you have to be super vigilant forever. I haven't drank in almost 5 years now. I've got a little bit more sobriety on Kratom than you do, but that's neither here nor there. But it does get easier. That doesn't mean you can't be and must not be super vigilant. But when you get those feelings, as you kind of explain, you got to sit with them. And then they'll get less and less as time goes on, but you still, you can never not be super vigilant.
The one of the other things that really keeps me from going back there is I tell myself, dude, if you go down this road again, you are going to lose everything. And it's not worth it. These little things that come from the gas station.
Yeah, an addiction's a progressive disease. It doesn't get better every time you go back out. It just gets worse. So you never know what the next one's going to be.
Yeah, and like I said, I've had ADHD my whole life, and I've read in a couple places that it manifests itself in children as bouncing off the walls and being insane in school and not paying attention. But as an adult, it can manifest itself in some pretty significant sensation-seeking behaviors because your dopamine levels are just always off, and you just never feel like you're happy enough, and you sit around wondering well, is this just what being happy is, or is something wrong with me? So that's also part of it too. But I know that if I try long enough and hard enough, I'm honest, forthcoming with people in my life, and I, like I said, fill that little blue bottle shaped hole with good things and good people, I'm going to come out of this thing a better person. Because that's the one good thing about overcoming an addiction. It makes you stronger in all the aspects of your life. Because if you can do that, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Addicts have to go through hell, and if you can get through that, you can literally get through anything. I believe that as well. What's your go-to music when you're having a bad day?
So my go-to music comes with my main go-to, which is exercising, which I never, I've always been kind of in and out of phases of exercising, but that's something I forgot to mention earlier, is that exercise really, really helps with the withdrawals. Everything in your body is telling you to stay in bed until you feel, but you have to force yourself to get out and do something, because you can sweat it out. But as far as my state of mind and mental well-being, getting up every day and exercising is just as good as taking an antidepressant. Let me see. I got a playlist that I listen to every time I go running. It's just called Sad Alternative.
Sad Alternative. Good.
Yeah, so I've got World Party on there, The English Beat, Marshall Crenshaw, They Might Be Giants, Phoenix, Good Old War, The Shins.
You got to mix it. That's not all sad. There's some happy there.
Shiny Toy Guns. Have you heard that? I haven't heard that since middle school until I started listening to them again last year.
No, I have not heard that in a long time, actually.
Yeah, so there's some stuff on there. Basically anything that will make me feel like I'm the main character in a movie gets me motivated.
Nice. Yeah, that's good workout music. I second your advice to exercise. I've always been big into exercise myself, and it's really hard when, like you said, the last thing you want to do is get out there. But even if you can't hit the gym in withdrawals or run, I totally get that. But even if you can get out for a walk or something, you'll definitely feel better.
Exercise is the only thing short of putting a chemical in your body that is scientifically proven to ease anxiety, depression. I find it to be a cure-all. Whenever Like the other day I got home, I bought a 24-ounce Truly on the way home from work, and I was like, I'm going to pound this. It'll make me feel good. Get open. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? So I poured it out, and I just went for a run. And that is the first time in my life where I've gotten that far to drinking where I just didn't. Normally,
That's awesome.
it's like a 20, I appreciate it, man. There's like a 20 minute buildup where you've already like bargained with yourself. You're like,
Yeah,
I'm going to do it. There's no going back at this point. I've already decided to. That is the closest I've ever come where I was like, nah, not right now.
Yeah, that's a great feeling when you're able to get there. What is your best advice for someone that's getting ready to quit Feel Free or Kratom?
I would say if you do have a job with some flexibility, plan to stop on a Friday afternoon. If you have a job where you do have some freedom to take some time off, I would say take Monday, possibly Tuesday off. Friday afternoon, go out to the drugstore, get yourself a bottle of magnesium supplements, get yourself a diuretic like beet powder or something like that, cranberry juice, black coffee, tea, stock up on all that. Make sure you're drinking tons of water. They say you're supposed to drink 64 ounces of water a day. Drink like twice that because you're going to need it to get all that stuff out of your body. All the supplements are going to make you urinate a lot more. And you want to do that because you're getting it out. The physical symptoms, I never had aches and pains, but I read that a lot of people do have some of that and flu-like symptoms. I didn't really have that. For me, it was the temperature regulation where if that is a problem, that's where the exercise really, really fixes you up because that's your hypothalamus trying to regain homeostasis. That's why you get the cold sweats and you don't feel like when you're cold, when you get hot really easily, you start to sweat. Then when you get back into a normal temperature, you feel like you're freezing to death. That's your hypothalamus. So if you get out and exercise when you start to feel like that, that'll kind of ease some of that lack of temperature regulation. And supplements, like I said, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin C. If for the depression and the anxiety, if you're not looking to get a prescription medication, GABA is really good, L-theanine, and fish oil. So, and all those things are fine to take with each other, obviously. Nothing's going to happen if you take those things together. Like I said, tons and tons of water. And when you wake up in the morning feeling like absolute crap, and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this, I don't want to move, that is when it is the most important to get up and move. And if you have those feelings of depression where you feel like the only cure for this is to go back to taking Feel Free or Kratom or whatever your particular poison is, reach out to somebody because there's somebody in your life who cares about you, and there's probably more than you realize, and all of them want you to be happy and healthy. Tell them, be open about your experiences with this stuff. Don't be afraid that they're going to think it's a joke just because it's not an illegal drug. This shit is serious, and I have a feeling in the next couple of years it's going to be it's going to be taken a little bit more seriously. I don't know if it'll be to the point of it, being regulated. I hope not, because I'm not really, like we were talking about earlier, I'm not really for that. But some people have issues with substances, and they have to coexist in a world where they exist without, taking it to the extreme. So, but people will take you seriously if you tell them, look, this is a thing that you may or may not know about. I have had a long-term struggle with it, and putting yourself on the line like that, they will help you. The bad part lasts 4 days to a week. You're going to get through it, and you're going to be a stronger person for it. When you get out, attack the reason why you wanted to feel better in the first place, because there's something there that made you want to alter your state of mind. And I think that's where I would recommend. I know therapy isn't everyone's bag, but it really, really helped me, because I started doing therapy when I was still very much addicted to these things. So the first step was just to stop. And that's all we talked about for our 1 hour sessions every week. Then once I stopped, the conversation became, okay, what is happening in my brain and in my life that's making me want to get myself feeling this way every hour, every single day? And you pull that weed out by the root.
You got a lot of good advice there for the listeners. So I think there's lots of nuggets that pluck out of there. The comment about, people will take this seriously, I would second that. I went the medicated assisted treatment route because I have a 20 plus year substance abuse history of all kinds of things, and it was just the right move for me for getting some true long-term sobriety behind me. But that's a long-winded way to say the doctor that I see and the program I'm in, there are lots of people in there for Kratom, and there's lots of people showing up. I do smart recovery. There's lots of people showing up there for Kratom, and like you said, it's everywhere. And I think it's going to blow up over the next couple of years. And the kind of wool that's being pushed over people's eyes from some people in the industry that are trying to gaslight people and say that this isn't a real drug or it's an innocuous substance, I think that'll be removed. And I think people start to really see it for what it is. And I do agree with you. Like, I don't think there should be a ban. I would like to see some sort of regulation, maybe on the lines similar to alcohol or regular or how recreational marijuana is regulated. And I'd like to see some sort of testing so you actually know what's in these products before they're sold.
%. And I'd go into, you just said something that I forgot to mention. You know, you said you'd been using Kratom for like 20 plus years.
Oh no, I had all kinds of substances. Only 4 years on four long years with it though.
That is another pretty important thing though. So I don't want to make it sound like there's no situation in which medicated detox isn't necessary for that stuff. I don't know 100%. I'm not super well versed on that aspect of it. There may be some people out there where that's the only way they'll be able to do it. I don't know how bad physical. I can read everything I want to, and I'll never know how that actually feels because, you know, I was working with a little under a year and a half daily use. So I'm sure for somebody that might have been why it took a week or two, like you said, to get through the physical symptoms, you know, because I think it builds a half-life in you. That differs for people, and some people may require that. But for me, and for anybody that's having a similar issue, taking a similar amount for a similar amount of time, that's what I would recommend.
No, everybody's different, and I would always recommend what you said. The first thing I would do and the first thing I did when I was quitting it was essentially taper. That doesn't work. Cold turkey. Try that several times. If that doesn't work, then do what you have to do to get off it because it's not going to end well.
Yeah, and if this has ruined anyone's life, they are being sued in the state of California for what appears to just be disingenuous marketing, because when it first was released, from what I understand, it didn't say that it had Kratom in it. I noticed some people that doesn't make a huge difference. Some people, it could have said Kratom on the bottle and they would have gone into it knowing that and had the same experience. I had never even heard of Kratom before I took this stuff. I had no idea what it was. And then when it did show up on the bottle, it didn't put off any red flags because I was like, Kratom, what's that?
I never heard of it until a couple years ago, and it just seemed to be like everywhere overnight.
Yeah, there's hope out there. I know it feels awful being in that hole where you just feel like you can't climb out of it, and the only way to feel good is with that stuff. But I promise, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there definitely is. And once you have that desire, you can't unhave it. So even if you've had, you haven't found success yet, don't beat yourself up. Recovery is very often not a linear road.
No, it's a process. I was telling someone that on Reddit last night who was like, you've seen you see these posts every day where it's like, relapse, I'm getting tired of this, try or something like that.
Yeah,
this is another thing that's so important. You can't be hard on yourself if you fail, and because don't let that be an excuse to keep taking it. I'm pissed at myself because I couldn't do it, so why would I even try? It's a process. It's every time you try and fail to stop it, you gain another tool to make yourself more successful at making that permanent change next time. So you just got to be gentle with yourself if you slip. I think we pretty much covered everything. I think we had like 12 anything you want to add sections. I think I added everything I could think of.
Probably.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate you having me on here to talk to you, because it really makes you feel good to, try to help other people. And anyone who does get to the other side of this, I hope you're able to make contact with them too, because everybody's story is going to be different and it will appeal to a different person. Mine might appeal to somebody, but then a couple months from now, somebody else might be able to break free and appeal to all different people out there. Like I said, the personal aspect of this, people, is what make the lasting change. And their stories, that's what kept me from going back, reading all these testimonials every day where people are having very real problems with this every single day.
That is also what I found and what was pretty eye-opening to me. Well, John, thank you so much for giving us your time and for joining us today. And, I wish you continued success with your recovery. And thanks again for coming on. I'm sure your story will be helpful to many people that are struggling with Feel Free and Kratom in general.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jacob.
Kratom in the headlines. Today, I'd like to draw your attention to an article written by J.W. Ross, the founder of the Feel Free products. This was a Medium entry that he made on April 30th, 2018, 5 years ago. 3 reasons why you should avoid natural flavors. The summary for his article is as follows. There is very little difference between natural and artificial flavors. Natural flavors only mean 80% natural, and they are not better for you. Natural flavors can be added to food without being confirmed as safe, so there's no way to know how, in the long run, they will affect you. Natural flavors are added so that people become addicted to the processed food, buy more of it, and generate more revenue for the food companies. The best way to avoid natural flavors is to buy whole, unprocessed foods and to check the ingredients label of any processed foods. And as of 2023, the Black Cat Feel Free Tonics, now known as the Classic Drink, the other ingredients beyond the kava root and the kratom leaf are water, pineapple juice, natural flavors, sativa leaf, and citric acid. So, listeners, I recommend you take JW's advice and avoid products with natural flavors. Resource of the week. Here's some information about the Feel Free class action lawsuit. It's being led by the attorneys at Arns Davis Law Firm. The team there has a steadfast commitment to seeking justice for those affected by the product Feel Free and the purported deceptive practices of Botanic Tonics and 7-Eleven in the marketing and sale of this product. The lawsuit claims that Botanic Tonics and 7-Eleven potentially misled customers through their advertising strategies for Feel Free. The lawsuit suggests that these corporations presented Feel Free as a safe, non-alcoholic kava beverage while allegedly hiding its high kratom concentration, a substance labeled as an opioid by the FDA. They further alleged that the formula of the drink was altered to intensify its psychoactive and addictive effects. The lawsuit also raises concerns about the targeted marketing towards vulnerable demographics, such as sobriety challenge individuals and college students, without adequate disclosures about the potential risks and addictive nature of the drink. The ultimate aim of the lawsuit is to hold those companies accountable and to ensure transparency and informed decision-making for customers. If you'd like to participate in this lawsuit, I will put some information in the show notes about how to contact with this law firm. I do want to caution you, with any substance addiction where you need to recover, don't fall down the rabbit hole of blaming others. It will impede your ability to quit a substance like Feel Free. At the same time, it doesn't mean you need to be a doormat to predatory companies, to an industry that is unregulated, and to the kratom fanatics. And last, there is going to be a case conference coming up on October 20th, 2023, next month. It's going to be at 10 o'clock via Zoom. You can participate. It's important to listen. There's no screen shooting, speaking, recording at that case management conference. They'll be supervised by the judge. I will put a link to a subreddit post about how to participate in that. So that's it for our Feel Free episode. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please send an email at kratomsobriety@gmail.com. You can also reach us on any social media platform. On behalf of Jacob and I, until next week, keep it kratom free.